include chain ID, as well as not every single message type is associated with a particular mempool. So for example, we modified the status message to include the block hash and block number that you've synced to, and that's very specific to a particular chain. So
and
that
mempool is specific to a chain. I don't see how a mempool can spread across chains.
it can, but technically the bundler shares a bunch of mempool IDs with a peer. So technically you could share two chains with a peer and just send the UO hashes on different mempool IDs.
The way I see it, okay, we share block hash, and the way I see it, the reason to share chain ID is to flag better the error, because if there is a block hash mismatch, it is a spam. If it is a chain ID mismatch, it is a configuration error. The only difference is how you log it. In either case, you disconnect because you have nothing to do with it. So yes, I'm putting a chain ID in order to simplify configuration errors is good, because you don't want to waste too much time of a spammer just to find out it's on testnet, on the wrong testnet. Now that the chain ID is okay, block hash is not enough to understand which chain you are. So putting
I agree
for error, and again, just once, just the status. So for me, it's okay.
Yeah, I agree. And I think unless we want to go modify the rest of the protocol to have chain IDs in all the message types for safety, I think having it just once in the ENR is important. So I recommended for the bundlers who might want to run multiple chains in a single instance to actually run their mempool, or sorry, their P2Ps on separate ports. So you can run one logical instance, but you just have to spin up separate ENR. Like you'd have to have separate identities, separate ports. And I'm not sure if I would recommend that.
They're logically separate bundlers.
Yeah,
completely
separate. Yeah.
If you share a port, you need somehow to distinguish internally.
Yeah, you should distinguish them.
Only suggest them to be on different IPs or different ports.
Yeah. So I think
that on 21 we are okay. It's the 18 that probably.
Yeah. So I think just to go through the summary here, I think 15 is ready to go. Dror, you've already approved it. It just, I don't have the ability to click the merge button. 21, let's see, Partha approved. So I just need someone with right access to approve and then merge.
I can approve it. Partha, can you?
No, I approved it, but I can't merge.
Okay, I'll merge, but I need to see. Do you know what we need to do to let you merge it? Okay.
We need to add them as collaborators. That's not an issue. I can do it. Yeah.
Code owners. It's called code owner for folder. You need to define them as code owners. Okay, this is which one I'm standing. Okay, I merged 15. Is it a single commit? Yeah, okay. 15 is in. The next. Why they're all failed tests?
There's a lint.
Yeah.
This spec check.
Yeah, spell check.
Static check. Yeah.
Lint and check. Okay. P2VMD. What is it? 13. Mempool subnet count?
You can probably close that one I don't know. I think that was opened, but I think one of my PRs removes the mempool subnet idea entirely from the spec because we haven't actually defined it yet.
Yeah. Okay, remove that. Actually, we left it for a long time. Debug bundler set mempool.
Yeah, we probably need to add user ops at some point, right?
Yes, it's not set mempool, it's add user ops.
Yeah, and that one's currently being used by the P2P test suite, right?
Sorry?
Yep.
Yeah, we need. Okay, match that. And next is redefine. What are these then from November? Pool user hashes.
Yep. So this one, I need to make there's a conflict and a couple small changes that I can do to clean it up. But I think so I'll do that today. But the rest of it is solid. This is we discussed this whatever it was 3 weeks ago or so. This moves to the pagination based approach for extra user op hashes when you do the pooled user op request. So we talked about having that just opaque field that the server can send back. I used the terminology in that PR from pagination. So that opaque field I called a cursor, which means nothing to the recipient. Means nothing to the requester when it receives a response, and then it could send it back in the next request.
What happens if you receive a cursor that is expired? Is it defined here?
So I think so. I have the expiry timeout, the pooled hashes timeout. We could define like an error message type that the recipient. So I have like the recipient must return an error. It says if a cursor is received for a context that is timed out, the recipient must return an error. We didn't define that actual error type, but some error.
Yeah. Have I commented here? I specified the cursor without a name. It's the last comment I see that I put in.
So that's actually specifically like that. If it's unnamed, that means it is it's an SSZ value, not a SSZ container.
Okay.
I agree. It's super annoying syntax that we inherited from the consensus spec. I would love a better way to just I don't know, figure out which of the two types we're using, containers versus values.
Name this parameter, it will become a struct.
Yeah.
It's a struct.
So yeah. So it is not a struct. It is just a single value that it sends.
Okay. Never mind. So then the question is it good enough as it is? Or do we need this timeout? Not timeout, handling of expired cursor in. Is it clear enough from the text? It may.
There is, I believe, another PR 20, which should be approved as well, because that's something that was missed from the existing spec, but all the bundlers have implemented it. That strict no sign signature policy.
Yeah, I agree. I think I approved that one. So it just needs to be merged. It's a pretty simple one, just inheriting from the consensus spec configuration.
Okay. Is that? Okay, 20 is in.
Yeah, looks like I have a couple conflicts to fix.
Okay.
Now that things have started merging, so I will fix conflicts and then get things merged or get things back up and ping you guys.
Okay.
The one that requires a little discussion, I know we've discussed this a few times, but I think it's important to make sure we get this right, is the gossip one. So this is PR18. So as it stands, the text still includes the idea that if a particular user operation matches multiple mempool IDs, it will the propagator of that user operation should send that user operation on every mempool ID that user operation matches. So my concern with that is that it's possible that if a user operation matches I think, well, one, we need to define what matches means, but two, if matches is more like does this mempool allow this user operation, then a user operation that matches the canonical mempool, which is the strictest of all of the mempools.
The definition we have right now, the idea is like this: a user operation should propagate to all supportive bundlers.
Yep.
Would be best if it is sent exactly once to each. If it does get sent multiple times, it should be simply ignored and used exactly once. No need to recheck the same user operation. And the only thing, and a bundler should ignore on which channel it received it and map it to the mempools it is required to use it. And based on that, decide how to propagate. We agree on all of that. The only problem, and now the definition, which mempool they are, it should validate it. If it passes the validation of the canonical, it is defined as canonical. If it doesn't match, or it fails to match the canonical mempool validations, it should try to find which alternate mempool accept it, and based on that, define it only on these alt mempools. And I said, I believe last time that I wish we had a better definition, a canonical definition on which a mempools user op is defined, so that the canonical will become just another mempool, because we have multiple canonicals, it's not only a single one. So
yep, and that's still exactly the open point of the conversation.
We have no proper definition for that, and we stay with that. We're not going to push the definition of mempools beyond that at the moment, because we want to get something out if and when we find that there are too many non-canonical mempools and user operation happen to fly too many times between bundlers. Maybe then or close to that time, when we see that we are going there, we'll try to improve the definition. Right now, we have an occasion that we will be sending multiple user operation multiple times.
Yes, and that is unfortunate because of how libp2p works, based on what we've discussed in the past. But so that makes sense to me. I think that is the simplest approach for now, is to just label.
We said that one of the problem to approach it is by working on the cache of the P2P.
Yeah, exactly.
It will prevent sending it, though still missing the information. Like, you sent on one mempool because I know. Yeah, it is tricky. I know.
Yep. So
I don't go deep into the P2P implementation yet.
What we need in this spec still is that's missing is actually how a user knows that the mempool is canonical. I don't think we've defined that anywhere.
What do you mean?
Sorry, not a user. Sorry, a peer. How you understand a bundler knows that a mempool ID is canonical. So we haven't defined that in any like definition of a mempool ID anywhere.
Wasn't that supposed to be published as, or the list of canonical mempool IDs published as a part of the spec? That was the original discussion that we had.
A canonical mempool for each chain basically define just two extra parameters above the canonical rules, and that is the stake values.
Yeah,
we believe that 24 hours is a good time. So the only thing is how much stake is at stake. Like, if we say that roughly $1,000, something like this, in ETH it says right now half an ETH, I don't know, quarter an ETH. This is the canonical mempool we are right now using. An example of what a change in a canonical mempool. Let's say that if ETH price fluctuates substantially, we might say that it is better to use, let's say, lower value for stake. So only 1% ETH is enough for stake. I don't know, if flew to the sky. So we define a new mempool like that. Probably most bundler will accept it as a new canonical one, and the two mempools continue in parallel. And again, the only reason one is canonical is because it is one is more canonical because more bundlers use it. I'm not sure. You have, yes? What do you want to say?
Yeah, just regarding the staking requirements, we can also change it later. I mean, right now it has to be in the native coin of the chain. But I think with all the restaking things we're seeing, like EigenLayer, it may be interesting in the future to explore something like, I mean, we only need the stake to be locked and associated with the address, but we don't have slashing conditions or anything, so it's even simpler than EigenLayer. So we could technically support staking with other tokens, and then it can be and then it can use things like restaking, which will probably, I'm sure many people who need to stake a paymaster would be happy about the capital efficiency of, just using something that is already staked for it. So let's say, it's not something we have to do right now, but it's something to consider. Something to consider for regarding staking.
Okay.
Yes, technically staking doesn't even have to be part of the entry point. It just has to be canonical.
Yeah, as long as everyone in the mempool know where to look if someone is staked, it could be a separate contract. So it could be a contract that uses the eigenlayer or whatever.
Never staking, so okay. So again, what is canonical? Canonical is something that everybody agrees to check first. That's why I'm saying because if you have two mempools, one saying that the stake, again, I'm talking about level. One say that the stake has to be 1 ETH, the other say the stake has to be 2 ETH. So the more restrictive one is the one that's saying that everybody should have a 2 ETH. Meaning, if now the stake can be lower, everybody that is using the more restrictive one will accept it, and only the new ones will accept the lower one. So,
but they can't be in the same mempool anyway, because they would treat each other as spammers. Because if user op is not valid for your definition,
not each other. One will treat. One is more restrictive.
Yeah. So the more restrictive one will disconnect, and that will treat the less restrictive one as a spammer, because they are sending user ops that are not valid by its definition of validity.
Of course, but I gave a user op based on a stake because this is an example of something that if you have let's say we have 1,000 bundlers. Again, the problem will be when there are a large number of bundlers. It's not relevant now. It will take time until it will become relevant. We need a network with flashbots or equivalent. Otherwise, you can't have a large number of bundlers. They will,
or a network where all the validators are also bundlers. Or a lot of them.
Yes, again.
Flashbots is just a shortcut. It's a shortcut to it. If there is in a network where there is no block building, no separate block building infrastructure, then it's just the validators.
Right. But I believe Dan's question was more in terms of, are we going to publish the mempool IDs of the canonical mempool IDs for each chain somewhere in the 4337 spec? Because at least in the current implementation of P2P, we have defined what the canonical mempool for Sefolia, Godly, and Mumbai are. Along those lines, are we looking to publish for the mainnets as well? Am I correct, Dan, or did I misinterpret?
Yeah. Go ahead, Roy.
Yeah, I think we should. We should specify this is the canonical mempool.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm not sure that needs to be part of the P2P spec, but right now the P2P spec is it just says if the user operation is valid on the canonical mempool, it doesn't define what a canonical mempool is. So it might make sense for me to put a definition of canonical mempool to explain the canonical mempool is the mempool that adheres to, and I can even link to 7562. Is that the new ERC for the AA validation rules to say, hey, there's and then eventually if we have a place where we're putting the canonical mempool IDs, which will need to be per entry point also. So there's gonna be multiple canonical per chain. I think this is the sort of thing that bundlers would likely want to hard code into their binaries. It's not like a configuration option. It's more like a hard coded thing for canonical, and then the rest of the mempool IDs are the alt mempool IDs are configurable. But any thoughts on where we should publish that?
We will put it in our repo. The canonical they will going to be documents in the repo. So it's either the GitHub hash, a commit ID, or which is some canonical, or the equivalent IPFS. We push
I think
IPFS and we use that.
At the moment, we're using IPFS hash of the YAML file. And if we could just post that YAML file somewhere on ETH Infinitism repo, that would be great.
IPFS is a little better than GitHub because it's more decentralized. But again, it's a unique ID that defines the content.
Yeah.
You need the content, but if you reach the content, you can be pretty sure that it's the same. This is why we use it. So yes, once we have some value, we'll put them. It means that if we ever do a change, like even a change in a stake, will change a default mempool.
Yep.
So maybe it does make change to have it in some way configurable. And then at first I was opposed to your idea of using a parameterized mempool, like a configuration file, and then I understand that it's actually a very good thing. The reason it is a good thing, not because I want people to try to whitelist thing and do stuff inside their code to support a less secure mechanism. It's because that if people happen to do it, I want it to be very explicit. Because right now, if two bundlers decide to do some whitelisting and they do it in the code, there is no way to verify to make sure how good it is. So it is a security concern. If we do define it in a file and we say, okay, we whitelist these addresses, we whitelist these opcodes, it is upfront and clear how insecure it is. I believe that we will be able to come and demonstrate an attack on such a mempool. It will convince people to avoid using it, and then just by checking what mempool IDs you support, it will be enough. So it is a good idea.
They could whitelist something that is safe as long as it's in the context of a well-known contract. I mean, you can't whitelist a certain opcode and be safe, but you can whitelist this opcode in a deployed contract where you know it's safe. So that's the only valid use for such mempools.
Yeah, because once again, this is something that will be after we release this really. But if we have a definition of what a mempool whitelisting or a whitelist mechanism is for addresses, opcodes, and other stuff, then we will define the canonical mempool as such file too. Of course, with all the whitelisting empty, it doesn't whitelist any specific address. It has that all the things that are that's interesting. We do have rules for the entry point itself already in the canonical mempool. Maybe we could define these as these are whitelistings.
It's a part. This is a part of the ERC. It's not. It's not. You are not whitelisting something. It's just a protocol.
Yeah. But
okay. So to summarize, in the P2P spec, I'll quickly define what a canonical mempool is. I'll say they're going to be published somewhere, known, and they're known canonical. For a canonical mempool, you only publish if a user operation matches the canonical mempool. You only publish that user operation on that canonical mempool. If the user operation does not, but matches alternative mempools, you publish it on all alternative mempools that it matches on.
Yep.
That's what the spec will say, and I'll send that out to you guys today.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so what we'll have a set of canonical mempools.
Yeah.
So if it matches any of the canonical mempools, by being canonical, also the order between them is canonical. So we check them in order, and you publish only on the first one.
Yep.
All the non-canonical ones are mempool that were not even there's no agreed upon mechanism, so you have to publish on all matching mempools, which might cause a.
Isn't that what we agreed on before?
Yep.
No, we never defined multiple canonical mempools. No, now what I'm saying is, yeah, it is possible to have multiple canonical mempools. And by defining multiple, we say what is the order between them. You publish only on the first one. And they And when we create entries that are defined as canonical, we're defining them as in a way that they don't overlap each other. So selecting the first one is good enough. Because non-canonical can be overlapping. And then you cannot define which one is better.
Yep, I agree. Basically, any subsequent canonical mempools need to relax the initial canonical mempool.
Yeah.
So there isn't a mechanism to make it stricter, to like make stake higher.
I don't understand.
So if you want to raise the required stake from 1 ETH to 2 ETH on the canonical mempool, there'd be a second canonical mempool.
If both are defined as canonical, it means you have to send it on the more restrictive one if it is.
Got it.
And
okay, that makes sense.
Yes. The canonical means that everybody has to support all the canonical mempools. Otherwise, they're going to miss something.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
More optional.
I think practically speaking, I mean, the only situation where we need to raise the stake is probably if there is already a denial of service attack against the canonical mempool, and the stake is not sufficient to stop it. And in this case, it's very likely that that nodes will also drop out once there is a more restrictive one. Nodes will manually drop out of the one that is getting attacked, right? I mean, it's not something that happens every day. It happens when you're under attack, and this is the only way to mitigate it.
Yeah.
There's a soft case where if the token price drops sharply, then the stake becomes less protective. So you might drop from this mempool even before it gets attacked.
Yeah, preemptively.
There's a potential attack. You might drop even then.
Got it.
Maybe we should incentivize bundlers to do it by attacking this mempool.
I think you can count on. I mean, if something can be attacked, we're in the blockchain space, it will get attacked eventually.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
I think that's all, at least for the PRs that I have up for the P2P. So I'll get those cleaned up and republished.
Okay. And ping me, and then we will push them. This.
So on Etherspot side, we've already commenced on the changes to the P2P spec as per Dan's changes to the spec, and we should hopefully be ready in the coming weeks, and hopefully we'll have a more full-fledged testing towards the end of this month.
Okay. Done. Does your bundler pass the spec tests?
Yeah, it does. The latest one?
I asked him Dan.
Oh, Dan, sorry.
We are like a few of the new reputation tests away from passing everything. I think we've got a PR up on ETH Infinitism. We've got is it just one PR on bundler spec tests? I actually meant to bring this up, so thank you for reminding me.
Okay. You never push yourself into the executor. I know.
No, we haven't.
I did it myself, but
we want to be 100% before we're out there. But right now, so we do have a PR. It's PR 50 on bundler spec tests. One of my colleagues put up. This is basically represents our entire local diff on the spec tests, and this max priority, he has a max priority fee change here that I think we can remove. The only change that I think is actually like correct, so like we should get changed in the spec test itself, is this one where we switch what we're asserting on from asserting on the actual error message to just asserting on the code itself. And we actually changed the code, I think, to the correct code. I think it's important to note for future spec tests that unless the actual contents of the message are defined in the spec, we should really only be asserting on the code, because different bundlers will use different, strings to respond to things.
Actually, this is something we need to do to add to the test. In case of error, I think it is a good idea to display the error, but for validation, just
we don't need to assert on it. Yeah. So I think that's really the big change here. And other than that, I think if we got something like this PR merged, that fixes that. We just have a few of the new reputation things to work through, and we should be able to get our test executor. We also have to work through some of our own. Right now, we don't have a published Docker container. People still have to just use the, download it and build it themselves. So we have to get our Docker builds working and that sort of thing. But we'll get ourselves on the bundler test executor soon here, especially as it becomes more important with the P2P mempool.
We still have work to do to make some DevOps on this site, because right now it doesn't. The automatic test doesn't run the P2P tests yet. That's still only built locally.
Yeah, and for P2P, we have some cleanups we need to do over the next few weeks here. So hopefully we can be ready for testing maybe towards the end of the month as well. We've had to prioritize a few other things internally, so I haven't had a chance to look at it in a little bit, but hopefully we'll get a chance to test soon.
Okay.
The other, I have one more just general question. There was the discussion last month that I think it looks like, that Vitalik started on compression. What are your guys' thoughts on that? I don't remember if we discussed this last time, but just curious what you guys are thinking, if there are any plans there.
First of all, we thought a lot about compression. Obviously, compression is for layer 2s. It's exchanging gas, cold data, exchanging a CPU for cold data. And since aggregation is very CPU intensive, you need a very high ratio between cold data and CPU cost to be effective. I once checked the ratio required to using BLS, and it goes like it becomes a break even when you get 10 user per bundle, no less. Below that, it doesn't make sense, and the complexity for the account, regardless of CPU, is very, very high, because you're using different signature mechanism. Everything in the account has to be different. So it's a very high ratio. You need like a few tens of user operation to make it worthwhile, and with the dunk sharding, which will reduce the cost of cold data, hopefully, it might be less required. So to push forward with compression, we first want to see how much dunk sharding will help. It could help a lot. It could be just a little. With 1559, I thought it will reduce the price sharply, and it didn't. It stabilizes the prices. It removes spikes, but it didn't reduce the gas prices, which remains not the same, but it's not an order of magnitude change. So I don't know what will happen with the dunk sharding. We did think about compression. There is the simplest and naive compression, which reduces zeros and doesn't help much. It's like 30%. And there is the high compression, stateful compression. There was a discussion with Vitalik, and we thought about it, how to do it. There were some messages from someone about that did compression, which but they didn't just compress. They did the proprietary fields. They pushed the Dymo. They used static values for all the things. They still had to put in the entire JSON, which is uncompressible. So it's not. This is not compression.
Well, it's not compression in a decentralized way. It's not like a compression that any arbitrary bundler can apply to any arbitrary user operation. It was very, very siloed and very.
The bottom line,
it'll be completely.
There is a room for compression. I did some work to try to have a modular compression that will be able to compress highly usable structures like token transfer for specific tokens, and each, the more usable it is, it will get a very, very high compression rate. But again, depending how costly it will be. And of course, and compression requires signature aggregation. Without it, you add 64 bytes of binary data to each transaction, which is a lot. So compression can do only that much for the rest of the transaction. So we stopped working on it for. At first, we wanted to get something soon to show off against the one that they show, the one big transaction they published, which most of it was not because of account abstraction at all. Yep. But it does require a lot of work in terms of aggregation. So until we have that work, we're not working right now on implementing compression.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I have started to see people start claiming kind of ridiculous things that compression can do. And while maybe if you're a user that's willing to use a centralized bundler, you might be able to, maybe I won't use the word centralized, I'll use the word specialized, a specialized bundler that's specialized to your particular protocol.
Application specific, it's a relayer. They used to be.
It's a relayer. Yeah,
it's a relayer.
I like using that word, a relayer. If you're willing to use a relayer, then you might be able to get some application specific compression, but okay, that makes sense to me. Specifically with aggregation, well, one, we still don't have the order flow to make it worthwhile, but two, I think I was even looking at Optimism yesterday, and Optimism, most blocks are less than 10 transactions anyway. So one thing that aggregation will probably need to do, at least to bootstrap it, will be to allow users to kind of trade off between speed and cost. So basically tell bundlers to hold off on submitting things until multiple of them build up. Have we thought through that mechanism at all? I've tried to think through good ways to do it. I think it's just, you can do it in the builder fee, but I'm not sure if there's a good way to estimate the builder fee with the RPC method. So I'm curious if you guys have thought through that trade-off between cost and speed and signature aggregation.
I must say, I didn't look at actual traffic in order to look at for aggregation, and it's a must and there are too many moving parts, too much complexity with account abstraction as it is, and trying to require, and we have a chicken and egg problem with the compression. Like, you think that compression will add more usage because it reduces the fees. But I wonder if the fees are the sole reason why not using account abstraction. If you're seeing that Optimism is taking 10 transactions per block, so account abstraction will not increase that much. It's not a reduced price will be that important. So, and the complexity that the signature aggregation adds, it's a BLS is replace your wallet before you even start, and you have to use that other wallet, other signature. You don't want to have two different signatures mechanisms. So the one thing that I want to see moving through is aggregation of normal signatures. Like let's use their own ECDSA and aggregate that using a zero knowledge proof. You make a proof that all these hashes matches all these signatures. If that this is using snarf or something. I never explored that. I know that some people did, and I'm waiting to hear until I will hear something about that. And then you will have an account that can win from both worlds. It has a single signature mechanism. From the account's point of view, it's a single signature. But and now we can move now we will have to add the complexity into the bundlers. We never fully spec'd out the flow of how to use an aggregator. We did have a rough design for it, but no, it wasn't fully spec'd out because it's very easy if you whitelist the aggregator. The idea was to let the bundler use an aggregator and not require it. Now, there are a few aspects of aggregator that are invariants, like you must trust it to do the right way. You must trust it not to grief the bundlers. So probably, so we settle on and say, okay, aggregator will have to have stake. If aggregator is staked, it can do too much damage. It has to fulfill the requirement that validating them off-chain of all the user operation, it means that they all get validated when they are on-chain. And we need to make sure that something we didn't yet, that account can grief this aggregator. You can create a malicious account that will, because this aggregator to get denial of service, and then you DOS all other users. These are things that we didn't fully checked out yet. So there's a lot of work in terms of aggregators, even generic ones.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it more.
Yeah.
In the future.
While we are at one last bit, Drew, you mentioned earlier that you were considering or looking into native tracers for bundlers.
Yes. It goes in multiple ways. The structure I did right now for tracer is a specific. So we have a parser, we have a tracer, and the format is very, very aligned, and several things can't even be done. Like, can't whitelist an address. So I thought of creating the tracer, recreating the tracer more close to the call tracer, if you know it. It's going to be a call tracer that with each call, it will collect all the information like opcodes and such. This way, first of all, it will make writing a native one easier because it will be based on existing tracer. Secondly, it will make, hopefully, more generic in that a single tracer can support any validation rule. Adding more rule, changing the rule will not change the tracer itself, which is also very important, because right now we do need, if we change the rules, we still need to change the tracer to support different templates of opcodes. You will be able to support APIs, you will be able to support API-based tracing and ignore storage in it. These are several things that will help. In terms of performance, I did a test, not on our tracer. I took the call tracer, which we have implementation both in JavaScript and in native, and compared the performance. And there was a big difference. I didn't do a massive test, but a single transaction test gave like a, I think, tenfold performance increase. I think it should be much higher, but this is what I got from doing a trace transaction using a call tracer on a heavy transaction and doing a JavaScript call tracer on that. I hope we can get better than 10 times. Actually, I need to find it. They had a very complex transaction that running the tracer on it took 5 seconds.
Oh, we have a lot of those, so especially when we build big bundles. So we'll do some tests sometimes where we'll build like 20 user operation bundles, and those traces take a long time.
Okay, if you have a transaction, an on-chain transaction, that trace transaction will take that time, send it to me, or the hash if it's on some chain. I want to do this comparison to check the benefit that a native call tracer will get. Because yes, it's important. We cannot get in real production, real heavy use with a JavaScript tracer.
Yeah,
I totally agree. I think the only way to the JavaScript tracer works mostly fine for it's just a user latency problem for the first simulation. So the first simulation, it's fine. The user just has to wait a little bit to know if their user operation is valid. The issue is the bundle simulation for the bundler, which is more of a time-sensitive simulation. That just unfortunately either, especially when the P2P mempool is online, will incentivize people just not running that trace at all. And so I do think at some point we will need that. Like, for example, we actually don't run that trace at the moment because we found that it is so slow at certain times. And right now, since we're not in a public mempool setting, we're okay with taking that risk. But that second simulation on the entire bundle is going to need to be low latency. So native tracers will be required.
Yeah, I'm thinking about okay, of course, we do need to do it natively, and actually, I want to see how we can reduce it to the validation only. We don't need to either in the tracer itself, maybe add a shut-off mechanism, because we don't need to trace the entire bundle. We need to trace the simulation of the bundle.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have examples of that, Dro? The tests that you ran, if you can share that, that will be great.
Okay, I can. I wrote a script how to run it.
Right.
In mode, and I actually tested on debug trace transaction, not on trace call, because then I have it exist because it is the same tracing.
Okay.
Tracing, I don't care if it is local transaction or I pull it from the server and trace it.
Got it.
The code. So I believe again, so Dan, if you have such a heavy transaction that you had and deployed it somewhere, please send me and I will publish the result or how we test it, the performance.
I'm not sure I have it at hand, but next time it happens, I'll let you know.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Well, maybe I'll have one from the out test. We have only simple transaction. Even the gas checks perform even when they do bundles. They do simple tests. Okay.
Cool. All right.
So goodbye then.
See ya.
Thank you. Yes. Bye.
Bye.